Dark Souls Remastered releases on the 25th of May, which should tide us over until we hear more about Shadows Die Twice later in the year. On screen, I'm going to put all the new specs for your systems, and these frame rates, they pass the test. It's going to feature 6-player online in PvE or PvP, which is up from 4 players, and it's also going to include the new password systems that have been included in recent games, which is a really great addition. We'll also be getting dedicated servers for what I believe is the first time, which has interesting implications going forward. I always wish that they would invest a bit more in their PvP systems, and this is a sign that they're doing that. And finally, a number of bug fixes and improvements have been submitted by some members of the community in the past year or so you can expect the more egregious problems in the game to have been addressed, probably. Apart from all of that though, we know very little about how much of a pure remaster this is, and Namco has been really quick to clarify that the game will not include any new assets based on the Dark Souls 3 engine or any combat differences. But no combat differences, really? Dark Souls 1's engine has aged quite a bit, and I'd be very surprised if they didn't tweak a few small things like backstabs or omnidirectional movement while you're locked on. And I think I speak for most people here when I say I'd also love to see tweaks to some of the rushed areas of the game. The obvious example that everyone is throwing out is Lost Izalith, and I can't imagine being From Software and not wanting to fix these examples of rushed development after all these years. Yes, there's a certain magic to keeping them exactly the same. Bed of Chaos is kind of special because of how terrible that boss fight is, but there's a really strong argument to be made for tweaking a few things as well. And with the introduction of dedicated servers for what I believe is the first time, I can't imagine that they'd be leaving Covenants untouched as well, especially with how bare bones they were in Dark Souls 1. So I wouldn't lose hope regarding some nice upgrades to the gameplay just yet, but bear in mind that there are no promises on this front. All evidence at this point indicates that this will be a remaster that is very similar to the experience of Dark Souls 1. But regardless of how much they change, and while I do hope they change a lot and keep it fresh, it's going to be a hell of an experience for new and old players alike. Because to so many of us, Dark Souls is what started it all. It's the gold standard for level design in Souls, because it has that amazing interwoven map structure that I really wish they replicated more in future games. This is the game where I fell in love with PvP the hardest, and now there's going to be this new huge resurgence of players just ripe for invasion. And it's the game with the characters who were so well designed that their souls persisted throughout 2 sequels. And their stories are the ones that inspired Prepare to Cry, which was the series that put this channel on the map. So, with that in mind, and I've been waiting a long time for the perfect moment to announce this, I'm happy to say that Prepare to Cry will be remastered alongside this game, with better audio, better footage, and all the tricks that I've learned through the feedback that you guys have given me since those golden years when I first started. Those stories deserve it, man. They're so good. You deserve it, and this is the perfect opportunity. May 25th is gonna be one hell of a nostalgia trip with you guys. And we should be able to ride that nostalgia high right into December, which is the absolute latest by which we've been told to wait for details regarding Shadows Die Twice. And speaking of Shadows Die Twice, which is kind of the reason I made this video, I have a few more revelations that I'd like to attach to this video that I've discovered since making the last one on Shadows Die Twice. So firstly, a ton of you guys responded rightly to that video with the question, how come nobody has translated the Japanese script in the trailer background? And translating that was one of the first things myself and many others tried, and we all ran into the same roadblock, which was that these are not modern Japanese characters. In fact, they're so ancient that they're barely discernible from Chinese, and they're written in such a cursive, calligraphy-heavy style that it makes a series of sequential characters really hard to read and identify. My partner was able to identify the words in Chinese for fish, tiger, shape, and maybe even blood. But at the end of the day, this might just be gibberish, not necessarily meant to be translated. But the most important thing, regardless of whether we can translate one or two words, is that our resident translator, Loremaster Noja, has said that there are Japanese-specific characters here, and that they have a calligraphy style that places this era in a period before the Edo period, but after late antiquity. So now we have a time and place in history to sort of work with here. The best, very appropriate reference that we have is Neo, which actually takes place right before the Edo period in Japan as well, and it sets up this world where the clans of Japan were at war with another and clashing for control of Japan. And once you insert a supernatural force into the mix, like in Neo, and maybe in Bloodborne, if this is a Bloodborne game, you have a hell of a story here, in a setting that From Software hasn't visited in a really long time. And speaking of Bloodborne, there have been a few other links to Bloodborne discovered in the trailer by user Cordofon on Twitter, who points out the striking resemblance between this chisel and the chisels in Gehrman's workshop, which is a discovery that goes hand in hand with the next little tidbit, which is that some of the runes on Gehrman's scythe actually look a lot like Japanese. There's a ton of good speculation I'm going to put in the description down below. I have a feeling all of this speculation might come to naught because we do this every year when they announce a new game, but they're teasing us for a reason. They want us to speculate, and it's fun to speculate, and when it's not Bloodborne and all of this gets proven wrong, we still had some fun times guessing. Because what else are we going to do until Dark Souls comes out and we can get our souls fix? But thank you all for watching. I'll see you in a couple of days because I'm about to dive into the cut content of Bloodborne, and I'll see you then. Oh, and before I go, it wouldn't be a VaatiVidya without diving into the deep, deep lore behind this 1-minute trailer. Now, if you zoom into the bonfire here, yeah, that's it, and then enhance the image.